You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 242, Coalesce. Hosted by Dan Terry.
You can buy beer pretty much anywhere in Missouri.
Geoff Kane.
I was imbibing alcohol legally.
And Joseph Wren. Sometimes you just gotta be ridiculous. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if your blue-collared lullaby comes with a six-pack, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Geoff.
Guys, are you guys ready to talk about our boys from Kansas City?
Yeah, it's about fucking time. That's all I'm going to say.
Geoff has been laying in wait, ready to talk about this band for almost 5 years.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in KC when they were big, so yeah, kind of exciting for me.
Kind of exciting. I think this band is outrageously exciting. I don't care how tired you are, Geoff. You're not gonna drag me down this time. Coalesce is probably one of the best bands in this genre as far as I'm concerned. And I may be saying their name wrong. I just want to throw that out, before everybody asks me and it's like, dude, you're the biggest idiot in the world. Why would you call them that? I don't know. I just decided that the last letter, the second to last letter of the C in Coalesce is a hard C, and I'm just sticking with that. So if I'm wrong, I'm sure you guys will have no problem letting me know.
Yeah,
but I will tell you something. I can tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing. This band is outrageously influential to most of the bands that I listen to today. Norma Jean, yeah, they borrowed a lot from Coalesce. A lot. Right down to the vocal style, the dissonant guitar riffing, the pure noise of this band, the unrelenting brutality in places. And these guys are really good about getting in, jumping in the pocket, and then getting right out. There's no messing around with these guys. There's no dancing around with these guys. And they are absolutely one of the best bands in the entire world. And now that I've said my final thought, I guess we can start the episode.
There's a certain chaos to classic Norma Jean, Converge, where you just throw the whole band down the stairs. Forget about throwing the drums down the stairs at the end of the song. We're just going to jump and see where we land, and that's a song. Coalesce has that, but it's a little more controlled at times. I do think a lot of bands borrowed from this style. It's a really good base layer for what would become chaotic hardcore or metalcore in the early 2000s, what we all found first. But this is the original as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're one of them. I mean, Botch, I guess, came out a little earlier.
Botch came out around the same time.
Okay.
I actually just did a video that may or may not involve Coalesce and Botch. So,
okay.
You want to give me a link to that in the show notes there, dude?
Whenever it's done. It's not. It's still very, very raw. I'm gonna have to have somebody smarter than me go in and kind of spruce it up a little bit. But yeah. So I mean, we're talking around the same time. We're talking this era where you had heavy bands like this. They're mixing metal riffs with hardcore riffs, which is nothing new, hardcore vocals. But this is where the bands start going in kind of this more mathy sort of direction, this kind of like Dead Guy, Converge, Dillinger Escape Plan sort of sound. And Coalesce is one of the first bands that like really, really, really took that and ran with it. Like really popularized the style, even though I think that the band is in the shadow of what metalcore became in the 2000s. I feel like bands like Coalesce kind of got forgotten.
Yeah, I would say it's more like when you're talking about like mathcore or chaotic metalcore and stuff like that. Your favorite band in that genre, their favorite band is Coalesce. That's kind of how I look at it. So, it's kind of like when you're like, well, it's grunge. I'm like, well, your favorite grunge band's favorite band is Mudhoney or something. Or the
Melvins, yeah.
Yeah, or the Melvins, or, even to a certain extent, the Meat Puppets, stuff like that. So that's kind of how I look at it. So I don't really, it's a shame that they don't get the accolades from the mainstream, but the people who give a shit about, this type of music that are really deeply invested know exactly who they are and know exactly how important they are to metal. And they will continue to make sure that, their name lives on. So does it suck that, not the whole world knows about it? Yeah. But it's nice to know that the people that that are supposed to give a shit do give a shit, and we do know that this band will keep on living on just because, just like we said, it's your favorite band's favorite band kind of thing, and that's what makes it cool. And I hope that us doing this episode will kind of get to open some people's eyes, because listening to Coalesce and then you go back and you listen to your favorite band, you're gonna go, holy shit, they really were influenced by this band, because they're like Dan said, it's incountable. Maybe it's not, but I mean, we're talking an obscene amount of bands that you can trace pretty much in a straight line all the way back to Coalesce. So that's what makes it super cool to be able to cover this group on this episode.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Before the Chariot told us about what happened before there was Atlanta, you had Coalesce.
So good. Are we ready to get into it? No, Joe's going to make us read comments.
Well, before Dan tells us if the music paid the rent, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We're on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. So if you have an Amazon Echo or Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
Hey, we really love our 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. We love your reviews, your comments, whatever you guys have to say. Keep them coming. If you are using a podcast app that allows you to rate the podcast in some way, shape, or form, I would highly encourage you to do that, because we'll actually read it on the show, pretty much no matter what you say, unless you say like a whole bunch of words that Joe's going to bleep out. So be careful on that. Over on YouTube, we actually got a comment on our episode 217, Cephalic Carnage. And this is from Jessery. He says, I just stumbled across this episode and I'm pretty psyched to see that other people still appreciate these guys. Never listened to you all before, but I'm only a few minutes in and I've already added like 5 more episodes to the queue. Cheers. Well, we very much hope you enjoy the other 5 episodes that you listen to. And we very much appreciate it.
Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite episodes, more recent episodes. That was a fun band to do.
Absolutely. Over on Twitter, the Berserker commented, Berserker. Loving the podcast. It's nice to hear actual discussion of the harder stuff that isn't just commenting on how heavy it is. Keep it up. If you're taking requests, the Berserker, I kind of saw that recommendation coming, and Deer and Gray would be awesome episodes. We will put them on the list. I can't guarantee you it's going to happen anytime soon, but we will absolutely try our best to get to everybody over time. The hard part is that there's like literally hundreds of bands forming every minute of every day, and you never know when one of them's gonna like really take off. So we're gonna keep fighting the good fight as long as we can.
Think of it as job security. You're always going to have bands to talk about.
Always. I know you'll be at my show. Wait, that's not.
Oh wait, so we're getting to.
Hold on.
We're gonna talk about MGK. Oh boy.
So Dan, tell me about Coalesce.
Coalesce was an American metalcore band. They are from Kansas City, Missouri. They started off in 1994. They are largely considered to be pioneers of mathcore. That's like where you're listening to hardcore music, but you could add really, really good and subtract and do long division.
Real
Coalesce
quick, 4 plus 4. What division. Is it?
8.
Good job.
And I'm listening to hardcore. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't know. Mathcore really just describes kind of more. I use it as a catch-all for just chaotic techie bands. Bands that play, highly intricate music that maybe just sounds like noise to untrained ears, and sometimes it sounds like noise to trained ears. It's really what you're trying to get out of it, I guess. Coalesce is just one of those bands that like Botch that we mentioned, and Dead Guy, and even stuff like Dillinger Escape Plan that came a little bit later. They were really pushing a style here, a style that I feel like more or less got ignored as time went on as far as metalcore goes. I mean, there still are like mathcore and chaos core and peanut butter and jelly core, or bands out there. But I do think that like these guys were pioneering in that. I feel like a lot of bands for a lot of years and continue to still borrow very heavily from bands like Coalesce.
Where did this band start for you, Geoff?
honestly, the EP, the self-titled EP. That was my first exposure to them, and was listening to them, and what will end up being my album of the week. If you're watching the video, you kind of get a hint on my 3-letter name on who my band of the week will be. But the whole thing is that it was something new to me. Loved the hardcore vocals. I actually prefer Sean's earlier vocals. I know I'm probably in the minority on that. I think a lot of people liked his later stuff, but I
like
actually
the higher pitch stuff.
Yeah, I actually liked his higher pitch stuff quite a bit. I don't know what it was. It just something kind of it just had this magnetic effect. I was really drawn to it. I don't know what it was. It just kind of cut through everything else with that higher pitch. It literally just cut through the dissonance. And I think that's kind of what made it cool for me, is that it was this, this whole chaotic mathcore, metalcore feel with, the EP is more hardcore than it is anything else. But I don't know what it was. It just kind of drew me to it, and I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, I don't think that there's that they would have been a full-fledged, metalcore or mathcore band with a 7-inch. So you're talking about the 1994.
Yeah.
EP.
Yeah.
Is that how far back you listened to it?
I think it was 90. Well, when did it's when Point Essential Volume 2 came out. So that's 95 or 96 is the first time I listened to the EP.
Okay, so that would have put you in your like mid 40s.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what drew me to it, is the band that's going to be my album of the week. A friend of mine showed me that, and they're like, if you like this, but you want to go a little harder, why don't you check out Coalesce? This EP is fucking insane. And I checked it out, and I've been hooked ever since.
There you have it, folks. We talked about an EP. We just slid it in there. Now, I also want to take this time out. Speaking of EPs, I want to take this time out just to say that I understand that Coalesce has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 EPs, and we're only talking about 4 full-length albums.
Yeah, don't forget about the 5 splits too.
So there's a lot of splits. Obviously, we're looking at a situation here where a good portion of the band's recorded material was in EPs. If you want to hear us talk about the EPs, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Send us an email, danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Let us know if that's something that you guys want, and if you want us to do that, we would be happy to provide that as an extra bonus episode on the Patreon page. So look out for that. Let us know if that's what you want. I'm not going to do the work if you guys don't want it. I guess is what I'm getting at.
I think it's 1997, and it's time to give them rope.
I'd be glad to. So you didn't ask me; you only asked Joe. But my introduction to Coalesce was this album, "Give Them Rope," and I didn't hear this until way after I heard way newer bands that had kind of copied off of what Coalesce had done. So it's funny, whenever you listen to Give Them Rope now, you can appreciate it for how great it is. The masterful kind of ebb and flow of these dissonant riffs. And, you've got Sean Ingram's deeper vocals. He at this point has shifted away from the earlier material where he screamed in a more high-pitched register. And he's now very, very deep. And one of the reasons I really, really liked this, I like the vocal performance on this record is, I talked for something like 7 hours about Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child by Norma Jean. And I always loved Josh's vocals on that record. And somebody was like, oh yeah, dude, that vocal style is not unique. He just literally just lifted the vocal style from Sean Ingram. And, I was like, no, the hell you say? You don't say anything bad about my record that I like so much. I'm very angry. I resemble that remark. I'm very angry. And so I ended up putting Give Them Rope on my list, and I did get to eventually buy it at a used CD store. And I got to say, I was blown away. Obviously, this was more of what I like, but I am sad that I'm a little bit of a poser in this, and that, I didn't hear this until probably, mid 2005, 2006, sometime around there. And so it was hard for me to appreciate how influential it actually was. But it is really hard to it's hard to quantify the fact that you were listening to a record that sounds like this. If you just handed me Give Them Rope and said, this record came out in 1997, I would not believe you.
Yeah, you'd call bullshit on that one.
100%. I'd be like, bands did not sound like this in 1997. Oh, but they did. And then I would then discover bands like Botch and Dead Guy and realize that, like, oh, okay, so this has been going on a lot longer than I had anticipated. And I'm fine with it. As a record, there are songs on this record that I absolutely love. Specifically, like Chain Smoking, which is track 6, is one of my favorite Coalesce songs. Did It Pay the Rent? Another amazing. What I like about this album in particular is that it's probably, I don't know if it's their longest, but it's a decent, weird thing to say out of context. It's a decent length. I like that you're 38 minutes. Coalesce is really good about like just getting in there, pounding your skull in, and then kind of backing out. And the whole package just comes together really, really well for me. If you like stuff like Norma Jean or The Chariot or Spitfire or even stuff like Dillinger Escape Plan or Botch. I mean, if you're listening to Botch already, you're probably already listening to Coalesce. But what I'm trying to say is if you're into this type of music, this is a great album to get for the collection, and just try to listen to it with the perspective of 1997. And an interesting side note, and I'll let someone else talk, is that this record was reissued, I believe, in 2004.
Yep.
And not it was reissued in 2004. It was also remastered in 2011. And the guy that remastered it is a guy that we have had on the show, and that is Reed Otto. At the time, he was in a band called Tetelestai. We talked to him about metalcore and chaotic hardcore, and we talked about all kinds of bands like this. And it was a good conversation, and it's really cool. His remaster is top notch. It sounds good, and it keeps the original vibe in mind. And he didn't just go in and just turn everything up,
I'd be curious to be able to find that the 2011 re-release, because that's a 2-disc set.
Yes.
And I've never seen it in the wild. I mean, I've seen pictures of it on the internet, obviously, but I'd love to get my hands on that. I guess that's all I'm saying. I want to be greedy.
Maybe we should see. Maybe I should see if Reed has one. has an extra copy of it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'd be fucking stoked. Are you kidding? Yeah, this was the only thing that I can really say that there's not a whole lot of negatives. There's only one little 1 minute track. I Am Not the First. I think that's the only thing that's like a real short little filler thing. But yeah, I mean, this is just, it's what you expect from your favorite, really just brutal metalcore band. And then you realize, oh wait, maybe this should be my favorite metalcore band, at least when it comes to like the more technical, mathcore, chaotic, metalcore aspects of it. These guys just, they don't disappoint, and it's always exciting to listen to it, and it's pretty cool to be able to cover it. But yeah, for me, I mean, Ingram's voice is still a little bit on the higher side on this. It hasn't gone. It's still, I think it's actually a little more. I think this is probably the most brutal that it is on everything. It is on this album, and maybe that's just I listened to the original production value. It just made it sound maybe a little more underground and just raw. But I fucking loved it, and I do need to check out the remaster just so I can see what the difference is. I'm actually really curious to see, because I still have the old stuff, and that's what I've been jamming. Even though I got a newer car, it still has a CD player, and I looked. It's amazing how many cars don't have CD players anymore. But I'm so stoked to be able to play it in the car, because I have about a 40-minute drive to work and about an hour drive home, because 270 traffic sucks. And it's a perfect time to put on stuff like Give Them Rope, because that's essentially what I do for all the idiots that are on 270 in front of me. I'm just like, go ahead, just fucking hang yourself. Just don't kill me. And that's seriously what I thought this past week while driving and listening to this. I was just like, yep, I'm gonna give you guys some rope.
Perspective is definitely what I had to use when listening to this album. I saw many a hardcore trope. You have the typewriter typeface on the cover. The song titles run together and create a long run-on sentence, which is something that you would see for quite a while, at least on individual albums. I think this band does it throughout the entire discography. But I love how clean it sounds. For an underground hardcore record, it's very clean. It's leveled very well. Is there a complaint? Yes. Yes, there is. You can't understand what he's saying most of the time. But it's that low, hardcore, barking growl that you want when you're listening to this type of music. So, does this album have flaws? In retrospect, I think Coalesce set the standard that everybody built off of and made room for a Norma Jean or the Chariot where the vocals are more front and center. But I think this band's goal was to create that wall of hardcore energy, and they succeed.
Yeah, you must have listened to like the remaster, because the original I have is it's pretty fucking brutal, and it's really brutal, and I love it because of that. It's not real clean at all. So I guess he did a really good job if he cleaned it up. Like I said, I'm very curious to see what the difference is between the two, and it sounds like there might be a fair amount of it.
The remastered version that's on streaming services sounds significantly better than my CD.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense. And and that's not usually my experience. Usually the CD for me is the gold standard, but when I listened to it on streaming, when I was at work, I found it to actually sound a lot cleaner than what I had,
Okay.
But,
well, I need to listen to it then. I didn't. So when I have a CD, I always spin the CD before I'll stream it.
Good job, Geoff. Way to buy physical media all over again.
Dude, I've had that CD for like 20 something years, so I just haven't gotten rid of it.
1998, Functioning on Impatience.
Wow, I feel personally attacked.
Like I say, this explains a lot about Dan now.
Yeah, it really does. I feel attacked. I feel attacked in a really good way, though, because I love this record. And this is funny because, like, for all intents and purposes, this album should be an EP. It is 20 minutes long and only has 7 tracks, but it is considered by most people universally to be a full length. So congratulations, Coalesce. You have successfully hacked our formula.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, and because of that, we get this, I'm going to shout out one of my favorite songs of all time, and that's Measured in Gray.
Oh, yeah. Measured in Gray is great. Yep.
So I was like, okay, I actually get to talk about a song that I like. That doesn't always happen when it comes to Convert. I was actually kind of worried when we were going to do this, because I was like, man, there's so much stuff that they have out there. But I'm happy to say that this is a long play. And the other thing that's really cool, have you guys seen the 2008 re-release vinyl?
Where it's got the rib cage like cut out.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool. And
I don't have that vinyl, so if you want to give it to me for Christmas,
no, I don't have that one either, and I'm actually afraid to ask how much that one's going for. It's probably just an obscene amount of money.
What I love about this album is that it is so quick and to the point. Hence the whole impatience sort of angle. You Can't Kill Us All is probably one of the best openers, and would kind of define what you would get again from later bands, where you start off with just the solo vocal, which I think is just super cool. Just him screaming, and then the music just like slowly comes in, like he's just screaming. Then you start hearing the drums, and then everything kicks in. And like, what I like about this album is that it has a kind of a swirling vortex sort of feel to it that they were going for on Give Them Rope, but this one everything just seems a little bit, I don't even want to use the word tighter, because I don't know if tightness necessarily describes it, but everything just seems a little bit more intentional than it did on the last album. They create like kind of better moods. I mean, the mood is mostly just angry, but you have more like atmospheric bits in there, like Reoccurring Ache Of, and it sets a mood. It sets a mood better than I think than Give Them Rope. And so it's a step forward, while the band really hasn't changed all that much between releases.
I'm feeling more of that laid-back punk-style energy that comes from these classic hardcore bands on this one. The stage is the same as Give Them Rope. I'm hearing all of the tricks that bands would rip off for years to come, but they're still laid back. It's a very balanced record. It shouldn't be as balanced as it is. I can hear what the Chariot would eventually turn up, make louder, and bring more energy to. This was 23 minutes of pay attention. We're going to get you through whatever emotional hurdle you're currently jumping over, and at the end, you're going to feel better about it. I think this band succeeds at that more often than not. It is only 23 minutes, though, so it's the American Standards formula.
Yeah, this one's 20 minutes.
I was trying to give it some credit, Geoff.
Well, I only say that because the next one is 23 minutes.
Is it time?
Yeah.
I guess so. I wish there was more to say about it. It's so quick. It's such a punch in the face. You don't even know what happened.
Yeah,
I liked it because I got to listen to this discography like 8 times this week. So it was a lot of fun, kind of in that respect.
Yeah, I mean their albums are like like a knockout artist. I mean they're in there to get you out in the first round and then go home. They're not there to win on points. They're there to kick your ass and get their bonus check and get the fuck out. And I think that's part of the reason why we like them so much is because that's kind of their thing, and we like that that's their thing.
So is this 12 seconds or 12-minute revolution in just listening?
I think it's just 12 seconds, but I could be wrong about that. Or 12 days, or 12 months. I don't know. I just don't know. I will tell you this though. This is a weird release because even at this point, Coalesce had been kind of touring quite a bit.
Yeah, like nonstop.
And yeah, they were trying to really get their name out there. But I guess, and I don't really know what the full story to this is. Speaking of stories, you can go listen to the As the Story Grows episode with Sean Ingram, where he talks about a lot of stuff.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah. I haven't listened to it in a while, so I can't remember exactly everything that was said, but I'll probably listen to it tonight before I go to sleep. And this was actually released after the band had broke up. They decided to break up after the last album, or basically after they were done recording this. Or no, I guess so. If I remember correctly, I believe that they had toured a lot. They had decided to break up, but in order to fulfill their contract to Hydra Head, they went ahead and just did the album anyway. Oh, I think this one came out on Relapse.
Relapse.
It came out on both.
Yeah.
It came out on Hydra Head and Relapse.
Well, the Hydra Head was for I thought that was the reissue.
You might be right on that. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Fact checking in real time. Because that's how we roll.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, because if I remember correctly, they just did this in a week or some ridiculous short amount of time. They're like, yep, okay, here it is. We'll write our parts, done, recorded over the weekend. Here you go. We're done. Because I think that's kind of how it went. Was it not? I mean, it was just a real quick turnaround on this one.
Yeah, I mean, they basically their van their van broke down and they just decided to break up. Which is kind of understandable. I mean, especially back then, and they were just done. But I gotta give them some credit just because for a record that they basically just put together in over a weekend, it is amazingly consistent with their previous material. They did a good job with it, and I wouldn't be able to tell you just by listening to it they just threw this crap together.
I'm going to have a theme for the next 2 episodes. We've been listening to a lot of bands lately that are the polar opposite of something else that we've been listening to. And this record, for some reason, struck me as anti-Hum. Maybe I was listening to the newest Hum record and loving it for what it is, that classic, dirgy rock sound. And then I listened to this, and it's kind of the opposite of that. It definitely sounds like a simplified version of the previous records, but it's still consistent, like you said. It's not as much dirge or attack or energy. It sounds like everybody in the band knows what their job is, so they just go in the room and do it. But they don't give time for the ideas to develop or the energy to build up. They're playing it like it doesn't matter to me. I don't hate the record, but these songs sound meaningless in the grand scheme of the discography.
I was going to say, actually, my curiosity on this release was that Relapse Records originally said that this was an EP. And I'm wondering, did they do that because this was supposed to be the final album in the contract? And since it was an EP, they would still have to put out another. I need to listen. In other words, we all need to go after this episode. All of us need to go listen to As the Story Grows. so we can find out, if there was a little, under the table politics by Relapse to try to make it where they Coalesce still had to do another album. I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I am also. I don't remember if they talked about that or not. Like I said, I haven't listened to it since it came out. It was a couple of years ago, but
was it the one? Did Brian do it with them, or was this with Travis?
This was Travis.
Okay,
it was one of Travis's last interviews. Okay. But yeah, I think that it's really impressive for being thrown together the way that it was, and I understand. I, of all people, understand why the label released it as an EP because it was so short,
right?
And they just felt like, okay, let's just get this disc out, and then that was pretty much it for Coalesce for a long time. So by the time I had heard the band, the next record hadn't even come out, and it didn't even look like there was going to be a next record.
2009, Ox.
So this is very interesting because everything that we've heard from Coalesce up to this point has been, had that kind of 90s dirt all over it, which is not a bad thing. We enjoy the hell out of some 90s dirt on this show. So it's interesting hearing Coalesce playing what they play. I think musically they're on par with their old stuff. I think Ox is a masterpiece.
Oh, it's good.
It is absolutely incredible, and it sounds so good. It sounds so clean. It's got that nice 2009 production to it, and it's interesting hearing Coalesce in 2009. Number one, staying true to their roots and not sounding like every other band that was out there at the time, which I wouldn't have expected them to. But it's interesting hearing Coalesce after this sort of music kind of had its heyday and had been a thing for a while.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when it came out. Number one, I didn't realize they were ever going to do anything again. Number two, I didn't realize how good it was going to be. So I mean, it was like a double-edged sword in the best ways possible. It was such a pleasant surprise, and I don't. Again, I think I've already stated it. I prefer Sean's earlier vocals, and that's just because I like that style. But the way that like you said, the production value, it makes it fit really, really well here. I think it's such an inclusive sound, and I really do like it for what it is. And I think part of it is just I got attached to the early stuff. That's just kind of how things go sometimes. You kind of get used to a particular style. I do like it when people go in different directions, but this one is really good, but I just can't help myself. I end up always harkening back to the really early stuff. And every time that I listen to Coalesce when I'm not doing a podcast, I always end up going back to the early stuff. And this is, I don't know what it is. It's not like it's bad. It's fantastic. It's damn near what Dan said, and that's a masterpiece. But there's just something weird in it for me. There's just that, I don't know. It just doesn't feel quite as primal to me. Maybe that's it. I don't know what it is. I really can't put my finger on it because it's not like it's bad music. It's actually really fantastic music. But I always end up going backwards when I listen to this one.
I'm in the same place. There's something this band does that is very unique, that works, but it's 10 steps lower on the decibel level than their imitators. I don't know what works for this band when it comes to the dynamics and the atmosphere that they create. You're welcome, Geoff. It's like we're making hardcore music for people that want to chill out for 20 minutes. That shouldn't work, but it works.
I think the chill out part of it has to do with this does have a little bit more sense of atmosphere to it. If you listen to a song like The Comedian in Question, there's some nice cleans kind of being laid down. I'm not really with you guys on this one as far as saying that there's something weird about it, because this is 100% par for the course Coalesce, in my opinion. And to be honest with you guys, I definitely spent more time with this record than I had. I've had it since it came out, and listened to it very frequently. I like the weird, kind of the more weird stuff on it. Like Wild Ox Moan is cool with its twangy, faux country sort of intro. I don't know. This record just has a little bit more charm to it. Some weird musical interludes. it's like this collection of ideas that maybe they've had kind of brewing around for a while. And I think had the band continued and not broken up, after their third record, I think they would have eventually gone here. I think it's a natural progression for the band. And as far as their imitators being 10 decibels higher, you can always just turn that volume knob up, Joe. You can always just you can just turn it up as loud as it goes and blow your speakers.
It's not about volume. It's about intent. It's about intensity.
I don't even think it's that for me on this. I don't have a good explanation. It just gives me a hankering for old school Coalesce. I mean, maybe I should look at that as if that's a compliment to this album. Not every band, 10 years later can release something that makes you want to go, yeah, I dig these guys. I want to go listen to the stuff that I used to listen to when I was a teenager. I mean, because that's really what this album makes me want to go do. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I just think it's a different thing. That's probably the best way to put it.
I'll admit that maybe the sound isn't quite as immediate, or, to use a bad pun, like it's not as impatient, It's a little bit longer. It stretches its legs out. It takes a little bit more time. But I do feel like if Ox had come out in, 2001, like nothing ever happened, I feel like this would be considered to be an all-time masterpiece of a record, which is what I consider it to be for the most part. It's definitely my favorite Coalesce record.
Final thoughts on Coalesce, Geoff?
It's one of my first early metal bands, actually. One of the first ones that I really got into that wasn't like Bay Area thrash or the Florida death metal. So for me, this was kind of like the shining crown of achievement, because for me it was really fucking cool that they were from the Midwest. On top of that made me like them even more. And when I was in college, I spent a lot of time in the KC and Lawrence area. I went to school in Emporia State, which is in the Bermuda Triangle of Kansas. If you want to look that up, it's god awful. God save your soul if you do look it up. But no, it was just it made me have a special connection to them, because the fact that it was something that was so pronounced and so cool, and it was from my home state, that just made me like it even more. And so yeah, for me, this band's got a little cheesy special place in my heart, just because it was the first real metal band that I really got into that was from the Midwest, and to me that was just really fucking cool.
Dan, what about you?
If it weren't for Coalesce, there wouldn't be bands out there that were influential for me. You wouldn't have Norma Jean as we know them now. You wouldn't have the Chariot. And those are bands that I loved. Yeah, because I did. I grew up in Christian rock, which is actually an interesting tidbit that I'm going to wrap into my final thought. There was actually talks of Coalesce signing to Solid State Records at one point, which would have been interesting, having Coalesce on like a Christian metal label. But every now and again they did reach out. If you guys remember Frodis was signed to Tooth and Nail Records, and they weren't like a Christian rock band. So I think it could have been interesting seeing Coalesce on the Solid State lineup. But I do think that this band is something that you need to experience, even if you think that newer bands that play the style are better. You're welcome to think that, but I think you're going to be really surprised. Yeah, but you're wrong. But I think you're going to be really surprised when you do hear it as to how well developed the sound was back in the mid to late 90s.
There is something unique about this band. I think it's the groundwork or the foundation that would eventually become chaotic hardcore as we know it from the early 2000s. That sprint of Norma Jean, the Chariot, all the bands that wanted to play 23, 24, 30-minute sets and have their song titles make one long sentence that has nothing to do with any of the songs. The randomness in presentation, the evidence shows me this band started that, or they were at least there early enough to be part of that foundation, to be part of that groundwork. So while you might not hear the same type of intensity that you're used to, this band was very influential in a scene that you love. So you definitely need to listen to Coalesce. This isn't your grandpa or your uncle telling you that the music in the 60s was the best it could possibly be. This is, you love hardcore, you need to listen to Coalesce. Dan, what's your album of the week?
My album of the week, for whatever reason, I've been back on this Limp Bizkit kick. I know, but I'm gonna have to go with "Significant Other" by Limp Bizkit. You just gotta sometimes. I mean, you don't have to, but I do.
Geoff, what about you?
Well, I kind of hinted at it earlier. My crossover band to get to Coalesce is actually Fragile Porcelain Mice. And they're actually from our hometown of St. Louis. And they are a punk rock / math rock band. So essentially, they are the mainstream version of Coalesce. I mean, to be honest with you, that they're just a slowed down, cleaner sounding, but you still got some really crazy, weird hardcore vocals. It's not as fast, and I love it. And it's Amigo de Fuego by Fragile Porcelain Mice, and I strongly recommend people listen to it. Their discography, their stuff in the early and mid 90s is just it was light years ahead of time. I mean, you listen to it now, and for me, like that in Frostbiting is just classic. And I wish they had made it bigger, but I know they did a lot of stuff in KC around the same time Coalesce did. And that was kind of one of my other crossovers too. It was kind of cool. After I moved to KC, I got to hear, FPM, and that's their nickname for Fragile Porcelain Mice. And same time I'm hearing Coalesce. So for me, it was super cool. I was so stoked to do this episode today just because I kind of got to bridge that gap and tell a grandpa story of how I got to know the band.
Well, props to me for spelling Amigo de Fuego correctly without looking it up.
Hey, somebody paid attention in Spanish class.
I'm going to go the complete opposite direction of whatever you guys have going on. My album of the week is the Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band, So Delicious. If you want to hear three people make some ballsy bluegrass, slide blues country, go listen to this band. It's not what you're expecting. Just sounds like dirt. I love it.
What does it kind of give you, like a John Spencer's Blues Explosion kind of feel, or?
We just came to raise a little hell, Geoff. Didn't you know?
All right, I'll have to check it out.
Take us out, DFT.
If you guys like this podcast and you have suggestions for us or bands that you'd like for us to talk about, we've got this gigantic list that we're making of hopefully at some point every band on the face of the earth. And we're going to keep doing that until probably we die or something along those lines. So if you want to suggest a band, we are absolutely going to put that on our list, and we will consider each band for coverage. And if you guys have anything else, reach out to us, danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/discography discussion. You can find us on Instagram at discussmetal. And that's usually the best way to reach out to us, but the best way to reach out to us is to join our Discord server. The Discord server is awake and alive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless Discord were to go down for some reason. Let's hope that doesn't happen. There'll be a link in the show notes that'll take you right to our Discord server. And if you want to get some sweet Discography Discussion merch, make sure to check out the Teespring link that is also down in those show notes. And we will talk to you guys next time.
And on that note, this has been episode 242 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.
$1 a month gets you into that exclusive album review feed.